The first thing is the incidence of dental trauma. So the most likely time period in which most of the dental injuries occurring will be in the first 2 decades of life. That is at around 2 to 3 years of age group is the age where you see a lot of dental injuries. And also the injuries are more common in boys when compared to that of the girls. And the tooth which is most likely involved is your maxillary central incisors, then your lateral incisors and mandibular incisors. These are the tooth which is most commonly affected in dental trauma. Mm. Now, the mechanism of dental injuries. So basically, there are two types of trauma. You have direct trauma and indirect trauma. So what do you mean by a direct trauma? So direct trauma occurs when the tooth itself is struck. That is, if the tooth itself is struck against a table or a chair. You call it direct trauma. Then you have indirect trauma. So indirect trauma is seen when your lower dental arch is forcefully closed against the upper. That it is not directly opening, it is indirectly a trauma is happening to your teeth. That is when you call a trauma as indirect. So direct trauma means the tooth itself is struck. Indirect means if your lower dental arch is forcefully closed against the upper, that will affect your teeth, right? That is called an indirect trauma. Now, next thing is about the factors affecting the trauma. So your extent of trauma is assessed by 4 factors that is given by Hallett. So the first thing is energy of impact. Energy of impact, energy is equal to mass into velocity. So that means if the impacting object is having a higher mass or if it's having a greater velocity, your impact will be more. Okay, that means if your impacting object is having more mass or higher velocity, the impact will be more. Hmm? Now, next thing is the resilience of your impacting object. So you have a hard object and a soft object. More injury is bound to occur if the object is hard. So that is the significance of resilience of the impacting object. Then you have shape of the impacting object. You see whether the object is sharp or a blunt. So you know that sharp objects definitely will lead to more trauma when compared to that of a blunt object. The next thing is the direction of the impact force. That is, a type of fracture will directly depend upon the direction of your impacting force. So these are the 4 factors in which you extend the in which you assess the extent of trauma. So you have energy of impact, then resilience of the impacting object, shape of the impacting object, and direction of your impacting force. Now, first thing is your Ellis and Davey classification. So, what is Ellis and Davey class 1? Class 1 is an enamel fracture. This is a very important question for you, okay? So, class 1 is enamel fracture. Class 2 is the fracture involving dentine. Class 3 is the fracture involving enamel, dentine, and pulp. Class 4 is the fracture that you see in a non-vital tooth. Class 5, very, very important, is avulsion. Class 6 is your root fractures. Class 7 means displacement of the tooth with neither crown nor root fracture. Class 8 means fracture of the crown end mass and its displacement. Class 9 means traumatic injuries to the primary tooth. Okay, so class 1 to 9, first is enamel, then enamel dentine pulp. Tooth has become non-vital. Class 5 is avulsion, 6 is root fracture, 7 is displacement of the tooth, 8 is fracture of the crown end mass, class 9 is traumatic injuries to the primary dentition. So this is the Ellis and Davey classification of trauma. Now, the WHO classification. So WHO classification, I know it is difficult for you to study the whole thing, but WHO classification is a numerical classification. You can see only numbers in it. So even though if you couldn't study the entire WHO classification, at least you should be knowing the WHO classification number for avulsion. Okay, so in case if you're not able to by heart the whole thing, you study the number for avulsion, that is 873.68. So 873.68 is the WHO classification for avulsion. Okay, now injuries to your periodontal tissue, yet another frequent and easy mark scoring area. So injuries of the periodontal tissues can be classified into concussion, then you have subluxation, then you have extrusive luxation, lateral luxation, intrusive luxation, and avulsion. So concussion means it is actually an injury to the tooth supporting structure without any loosening of the tooth. That is, the tooth is not mobile or without any displacement of the tooth, but it has got marked reaction to percussion. Okay, that means if you're doing if you percuss the tooth, the child or the patient will be having symptoms, right? So concussion means percussion, percussion. So concussion means there is no displacement, no mobility, but it will lead to marked reaction to percussion. Now, the second injury is subluxation. Subluxation means luxation word is there. That means that there is movement of the tooth. That is, there is abnormal loosening of the tooth, but without any displacement. So subluxation means abnormal loosening without any displacement of the tooth. Okay. Now, the third injury is extrusive luxation. So extrusive means extrusion. That is, the tooth is coming out of the socket. So what it shows? It shows displacement, and the displacement is out of the socket. And also the tooth is mobile. Extrusive luxation. The tooth is extruded and also the tooth is mobile. So extrusive luxation is otherwise called peripheral dislocation or partial avulsion. Okay. Now, the fourth injury to the periodontal tissue is lateral luxation. So lateral luxation means it is the displacement of the tooth in any direction other than axial. So extrusion means it is in the axial plane out of the socket. Intrusion means it is the displacement of the tooth into the alveolar socket. Then you have lateral luxation where there is displacement of the tooth in any other direction other than axial. Okay. Now, the last type of injury is avulsion or X-articulation. It is a complete displacement of the tooth out of the socket. That is called avulsion. Okay, so these are the injuries to the pedial tissue. So you have concussion where you don't see any mobility and displacement, but you see marked reaction to percussion. In subluxation, you don't see displacement, but you see loosening of the tooth. Extrusive luxation means displacement is there, abnormal loosening of the tooth is there. Lateral luxation means displacement in any direction other than axial. Intrusive luxation means displacement of the tooth into the socket. Avulsion or X-articulation means it's a complete displacement of the tooth out of the socket. Okay, so these are the injuries to the periodontal tissues. Now, next is the traumatic dental injuries. So when you talk about the traumatic injuries, you see the luxation injuries or the injuries affecting your periodontal ligament most commonly in primary dentition. And at the same time, crown fractures are the injuries that you commonly see in a permanent dentition. Okay, so in primary tooth, what you see is most likely luxation injuries. Now, the first injury, we'll start with the injuries to the primary tooth. And the first injury is enamel fracture. So if you see an enamel fracture in a primary tooth, what will be your treatment option? Your first option will be you smoothen any sharp edges is present, and if needed, you can restore it with GIC or composite. Then you give patient instructions like advise soft diet, proper oral habit, proper brushing habits, proper oral cleaning habits, and all has to be followed. So that is a treatment option for enamel fracture. Now, if the fracture is involving enamel and dentine, now what will you do? If the fracture is involving enamel and dentine, what you do is that you cover the exposed dentine with glass ionomer or composite, and then finally you can restore the lost tooth structure with composite immediately or later. Okay, if it is deep dentinal, you have to do a calcium hydroxide capping and then place a glass ionomer or composite if the dentine involvement is high, or else you can just simply place a GIC or composite restoration onto the fractured tooth surface. Now, the next type of injury in the primary tooth is a complicated crown fracture. Or what do you mean by a complicated crown fracture? You call a crown fracture complicate if it is involving your pulp. So here you can see that your fracture is involving your enamel, dentine, and pulp. So whenever pulp is involved, always you should be keeping in mind that you should attempt to preserve the vitality of the pulp. So whenever possible, your treatment option should be partial pulpotomy. And even though you say a lot of disadvantages about calcium hydroxide, when it comes to trauma, the suitable material is calcium hydroxide. So the recommendations I have been giving in the trauma guidelines are all taken from International Association of Dental Traumatology's trauma guidelines, which is again accepted by the American Academy of Endodontics and American Academy of Pediatric Dentists. So whatever guidelines I'm taking from now on, everything has been accepted everywhere. So despite the fact that calcium hydroxide has a lot of problems, when it comes to trauma, the IADT guidelines suggest calcium hydroxide as a suitable material. So what you do is that you place calcium hydroxide paste over the pulp, you cover it with GIC and restore it with composite. And if everything fails only, or your ultimate treatment option only will be extraction. So whenever possible, you should try to preserve the pulp vitality by doing a partial pulpotomy. Okay. Now, next thing is a crown root fracture. So in the case of a crown root fracture, it may or may not involve the pulp. If the crown root fracture is like this, it is not involving your pulp, right? And if the fracture line is like this, it is involving your pulp. So most appropriate emergency situation treatment is that you do no treatment. Now, if you are going for a treatment in the first visit itself, the first option will be to remove the loose fragment. That is, whatever fragment that is fractured, you try to remove the loose fragment and check if it can be restored. Okay. Now, if it can be restored, you have two options. That is, if it is restorable and if the pulp is not exposed. If the pulp is not exposed, you can give you can cover the exposed dentine with glass ionomer cement. Now, if it is restorable and pulp exposed, you can either go for pulpotomy or RCT, depending upon the level of fracture and root development. That is, in the case of a in case of a young tooth, you can go for a pulpotomy. Now, the next thing is if it is unrestorable. If the fragment is unrestorable, what you do is that you extract the loose fragment without damaging the permanent tooth, but leave the fragment in situ or extract the entire tooth. Okay, if the fragment which we are talking about is unrestorable, you extract the fragment and then you can either leave it like that or extract the entire tooth. So these are the options for a crown root fracture. So if the crown root fracture is restorable without any pulp exposure, you can directly give GIC or composite or anything like that. And if pulp is exposed and restorable, you go for pulpotomy or RCT. Okay, and if it is non-restorable, either you can extract the fragment without damaging your permanent tooth, but leave the firm fragment there, or you can go for extraction of the entire tooth. So these are the options for a crown root fracture. Now, next thing is a root fracture. So root fracture, the prognosis always depends upon the location, whether it is a mid-root or an apical third fragment, apical third fracture. So what is happening is that in the case of a root fracture, the coronal fracture, that is the coronal fragment may be mobile or displaced, and it can lead to occlusal interference also. So what are the treatment options? If the coronal fragment is not displaced, that is, if the fragment is not displaced, you don't have to go for any treatment. Now, if the coronal fragment is displaced and if it is not excessively mobile, you can leave it for spontaneous repositioning. Okay. Now, if the coronal fragment is displaced, excessively mobile, and interfering with occlusion, you have two options. That is, if the fragment is displaced and if it's mobile and if it is interfering with the occlusion. So the first option is that you can extract only that fragment and the apical fragment should be left to be resorbed. Now, the second option is that you gently reposition the coronal fragment, and if unstable, you can give a flexible splinting for 4 weeks. Okay, so these are the two options that you do if the coronal fragment is displaced, excessively mobile, and interfering with occlusion. So whatever things I'm talking, you go and read the synopsis today itself. I've given everything in your synopsis. Okay, now you listen, understand, and we'll go ahead. Now, the next fracture is alveolar fracture. So alveolar fracture means your fracture is involving the alveolar bone. So either the labial, palatal, lingual bone or it may extend into the adjacent bone. So whenever there is an alveolar bone fracture, the mobility and dislocation of the segment will be there, and also there will be occlusal interferences. So this alveolar fracture may involve at any level. Sometimes it may be at the level of primary tooth, or it may be at the level of your permanent successors. Now, so whenever the treatment options for an alveolar fracture is that you reposition the displaced fracture segment and then you splint it and you stabilize it for 4 weeks, and you always monitor the tooth in the fracture line. So alveolar fracture can occur at any level. It may be at the level of your primary tooth, it may be at the level of your erupting permanent tooth, or anything like that. So you reposition the segment and then splint, you stabilize it for 4 weeks, and you monitor the tooth that is present in the fracture line. So that is alveolar fracture. Now, next we move on to the luxation injuries in primary tooth. So the first thing is concussion. So concussion, we said there is no displacement, no loosening of the tooth, but only you see a marked reaction to percussion. So no treatment is needed in concussion. You just have to observe. You just have to wait and watch if the tooth has undergone a concussion injury. Okay. Now the next injury is subluxation. Subluxation means it is a luxation. There is no displacement, but the tooth is mobile. So that shows that the tooth is tender and it has got increased mobility. And usually you see bleeding from the gingival crevice also. So in subluxation also, you don't have to give any treatment. You just observe it. And you advise patient instructions like soft toothbrush, soft diet, Chlorextine mouth rinses. They are all advised for subluxation. Or any injury, you advise the proper oral hygiene instructions. So in concussion and subluxation also, no treatment needed. Now the next injury is extrusive luxation. Now, in extrusive luxation, you can see that clinically the tooth will appear elongated because the tooth is extruded, and also it is excessively mobile also. So radiographically, you can see an increased periodontal ligament space apically. See, you can see an increased PDL space apically. So if the tooth is not interfering with the occlusion, you will always let the tooth to spontaneously reposition itself. If the tooth is excessively mobile or extruded more than 3 millimeters, then you extract the tooth under LA. Okay, so if it is not interfering with occlusion, let the tooth spontaneously realign. If it is excessively mobile or extruded, then you go for extraction of the tooth. So that is a treatment option for extrusive luxation. Now, the next injury is a lateral luxation. So whenever you are talking about injuries to primary tooth, you should always keep in mind about the erupting permanent tooth also. So whenever there is a lateral luxation, if there is no occlusal interference. What is the problem with a lateral luxation? Definitely it can lead to occlusal interference. So if there is no occlusal interference, you allow the tooth to reposition on spontaneously for around 6 months. And if there is severe displacement, you have two options. The first option is that extraction when there is a risk of ingestion or aspiration. That is, if the tooth is excessively mobile, you have excessively mobile and displaced, you go for extraction. Or otherwise, if the displacement is only minor, you reposition the tooth. That is, you unlock. In lateral luxation, the tooth may become locked in a different position. So you unlock the tooth and you place it back into its original position and you splint it for 4 weeks. Okay, the splinting durations of various things I'll be mentioning towards the end. Depending upon the mobility, you have to go for splinting. Splinting and all will be covering again. Okay. Depending upon the mobility of the tooth. If it's only slightly mobile, you don't have to splint. If the tooth is excessively mobile, you have to go for a splinting. That is it about splinting. Okay. So then that finishes lateral luxation. Now, the next thing is intrusive luxation. So in intrusive luxation, keep in mind, if the apex is displaced towards or through the labial bond plate, you leave it for spontaneous repositioning, and usually which occurs at around 6 months to 1 year of age. So this is the updated guideline of International Association of Dental Traumatology. So till last year, it was said that in the case of intrusive luxation, what is happening is that there is high chance to injure your permanent tooth bud. So you have to go for extraction in the case of severe intrusive luxation in the case of a primary tooth. Okay, so but the present guidelines suggest that if the apex is displaced towards or through the labial bone plate, you leave the tooth for spontaneous repositioning, which usually occur at around 6 months to 1 year of age. That is about intrusive luxation. Now about avulsion. Keep in mind it is not recommended to replant an avulsed primary tooth. If you try to reimplant an avulsed primary tooth, the chances of resorption, ankylosis, everything will be there. So avulsed primary tooth is not reimplanted. Okay, keep in mind it is not reimplanted. No. So the main problem with an avulsed tooth is that if it most of the time it is out of the mouth, but there is a risk and it can embed it in your soft tissue like lip, cheek, tongue, or anything. So you keep in mind if the avulsed tooth is not found, you have to check for a medical evaluation. If the child gets a avulsed tooth in hand, then you don't have to worry. But if the tooth is missing, then you have to go for a medical evaluation, suspecting ingestion or inhalation of your